Thanks very much, Lita. Maybe by way of introduction so that you can hear our voices. My name is Zizi Kodwa, Minister of Arts and Culture. On my right, I would like the President so that we can hear his voice.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Hendricks, President of the South African Sports Confederation Olympic and Paralympic Committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Harry Galant. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Institute for Growth and Sport.
Afternoon. My name is Wafika Beg-Jassim, Legal Manager at the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport.
Thank you very much. We thought we should have this opportunity with the media to save you, to update the nation on a matter that is quite important, that has thrown a lot of anxiety, both domestically and internationally. On the 22nd September 2023, the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, International Standard for Compliance Review Committee, by signatories, recommended that current South African legislation is non-compliant with the 2021 Anti-Doping Code. The recommendation was later endorsed by WADA Executive Committee. WADA conveyed the decision of the South African to the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport, which is now SAIDS, people seated on my left. Since the announcement of that decision, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has pulled all stops to resolve the non-compliance by getting the South African Institute of Drug-Free Sport Amendment Bill adopted expeditiously. I presented the bill to Cabinet last week, the fourth Wednesday, and my colleagues in Cabinet had full appreciation of the effect of non-compliance decision it will have on the morale of our athletes and on the spirit of our sporting-loving nation. And therefore Cabinet on that day approved the release of the draft bill, which was an important step in meeting the reinstatement and the conditions as set out in the decision. At the end of September, I joined the AGM of SASCOC, represented by its President, Barry Hendricks, next to me, to address sports bodies and federations to assure them of our commitment to comply and to put this matter to bed. The responsibility weighed heavily on our shoulders as we have the Springboks and Proteas men competing in the World Cups in France and India, respectively. We draw courage from our National Cabinet decision on the 4th of October 2023 last week to approve the onward processing of the bill, the draft bill. Of course, our detractors will not see the significance of this act to nation building and social cohesion. We are relieved now that the bill will be subjected to the scrutiny of the state law advisors. I've made a special request to the leader of government business for the bill to be fast-tracked through a parliamentary system. I'm confident that WADA will recognize the efforts as a commitment to pass the amended legislation and therefore WADA we hope that it will suspend the non-compliance declaration. In tandem with all these processes, SAIDS filed a notice to challenge WADA's compliance declaration against South Africa through Court of Arbitration in Sport, known as CAS. I believe the grounds for appeal are strong and that the sanctions are not appropriate. The sanctions as it pertains to the flying of the national flag has created unnecessary hysteria and punished athletes and players unfairly who are competing for the pride of our nation, South Africa. The filing of appeal will therefore stave off the consequences of non-compliance as it applies to the flying of South Africa's flag at regional, continental and world championship and events organized by major event organizations. This means that flying of South Africa's flag at events such as cricket and World Cup will not be affected until CAS rules on this challenge. I note that the issue of singing of national anthem has been conflated with non-compliance matter in a political space to slander the government and the governing party, the ANC. The political barbs have ignored the rigid and uncompromising stance of WADA on this matter of national anthem. South Africa is a constitutional democracy, and an enactment of laws cannot just be done on a stroke of a pen. In our democratic history, South Africa has put forward the best among us to serve on the WADA board. These include, among others, the late Dr. Makhenkesi Arnold Stofile. We've also hosted the WADA conference. We are also a host to the WADA Regional Office here in Cape Town in the Western Cape. We have long been pioneers and champions of drug-free sport. Thank you very much. We can now take questions.
Colleagues, may I ask as well, before you ask the question, please introduce yourself and which media house you're from.
Maybe before we ask questions, I would like to allow the President of SASCOC just to say a few remarks.
Thank you, President Minister.
I received.
So used to it. I want to state that the various national federations, as well as the SASCOC board, has taken this matter very seriously and are very anxious and concerned about the wider statement. The Minister met with us and the board on the 30th of September. Our approach is, as always, to work together to resolve matters, to appeal to WADA, to rescind the statement first of all, and notwithstanding that, to follow the process, the legal process, which the Minister has implemented. This is not only ours, it's also the IOC's approach of engagement, and SASCOC will abide by that. We want to engage to ensure that our athletes and our teams are not compromised in any way. And I want to thank the Minister for his proactive approach, coming in and meeting this particular challenge head on. So thanks more.
Comments from WADA? From SAIDS.
Thank you, Minister. Again, we are here merely to support and endorse the Minister's comments and SASCOC's comments too, and we'll take questions that of a technical nature that you would be interested in pertaining to the legal process and the non-compliance.
Maybe we can deal with that, just the nature of the appeal and the grounds of appeal, and just at the high level.
The nature of the appeal, which we will lodge today, is a notice of intent to dispute, which says, as a signatory to the code, will file on behalf of South Africa to WADA. Part of the notice of intent to dispute is, as the SASCOC President mentioned, first to consider the matters that have already been done, as the Minister referred to them, to the Cabinet approval and the process, and for WADA to consider rescinding the non-compliance declaration. If WADA does not accept that, they will then file it, and it will go forward to the Court of Arbitration in Sport.
Anything, Wafika? Thank you. You can now take questions, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I go?
Yes, Steve.
Hi, it's Christian de Bezier from Netwerk 24. Minister, just for clarity, on what grounds specifically will the appeal be lodged today? And then, just secondly, the code has been adopted in 2021 already, and for some reason, government did not act in time to reach the stipulated time for the amendment to the necessary legislation. Why did that happen, and who exactly was asleep at the wheel in South Africa, and will there be consequence management? Thank you.
Yes, Minister. Why did it have to come to this stage when the code was adopted in 2021 and South Africa knew that they knew what needed to be done to be able to comply? Because, Minister, it seems that there is someone sleeping at the job. This same thing happens on the grey listing. Yes, we're not dealing with the grey listing matter here, but it's the same thing that at the end of the day, things had to be done rushing. Besides asking the government, the leader of government business, to make sure that the legislation is processed quickly, for a credible legislation to be done, it must go through all processes. And soon, Parliament is expected to adjourn for elections. When are we likely to see the bill being passed? Are there deadline timeframes? Thanks.
That's Ayanda Felem from the Athlete. The question is going to say, I might have missed it earlier, but I just want to find out when did you guys notify the government of the bill, if it came from you, via you to the government, and what was the response from government when you notified them about this? Thank you.
Shall we go and answer those questions next?
I can assure you there is a question here.
No.
And I think he's waiting for a second round. Thank you very much. But I think quickly, Duplessis, I think also the questions asked by Maja. What I think it will be prematurely of me at this stage is to make public pronouncements about speculations, about what could have, what did not, what should have. I think also it will be irresponsible of me if I don't take particular step to answer the question. So the only appropriate way is to investigate from you what happened. And I think unless that investigation is done and completed, I don't think it will be appropriate to make speculations. Otherwise, I'll be looking for shadows. You're right about the process and what time, but I think the investigation must be able to point to me what happened. So I won't be able to make. You're correct when it comes to the lawmaking process in South Africa. We're a democratic country, which is underpinned by public participation among others. So we don't want to short-circuit processes, which at the end you may compromise the integrity. Our suggestions is that between now and sometime in May, because taking into account all necessary processes to come with a very credible legislation, it will require a participation of all. So the timelines, which has been an issue between then, to's and fro, ourselves and SAIDS as well as WADA, has been their short timelines when it comes to amendment in legislation. We're a sovereign country, we work in a particular way. It's not on the stroke of a pen that tomorrow you can announce amendment to a law. It has got huge implications, not only integrity, but also the participation. So we think between now and May should be sufficient for us to really to come up with a credible legislation with all the amendments. By the way, for you to know, the amendments have been submitted to WADA. There were to's and fro's about those provisions, several provisions, and WADA has accepted those amendments. Of course, it's not an act, but they've accepted wholly those amendments. Hence, they are now in the process of being amalgamated in terms of the South Africa's law processes. I've answered the deadline, I've answered the amalgamation, I've answered the question about whether government was aware and so on. I cannot sit in here and say so-and-so is responsible. By the way, my approach when it comes to resolving problems, I'm sure some of you would know, is not to look for a blame game. My immediate approach when dealing with crisis, difficulties, is to look for solution. The issues about who's responsible, sometimes those issues for me come a little bit later. What I'm looking for now is to make sure that the consequences, as you can see them, which will be very dire for the country, I don't even contemplate that South Africa must find itself in terms of, if you read the consequences of being non-compliant. So that is where I have sleepless nights at the moment. The issues about, I can come to those issues a little bit later, hence the investigation would for me give me a sense. But at the moment, what my preoccupation is to make sure that South Africa remains compliant as a leader of anti-doping in the continent and the world. Thank you. I'm not sure if the panel wants to say something about some of the questions asked.
The question from two SAIDS about earlier.
Thank you. The question was, when did we notify government and what was the response? Just to give a background to that question, South Africa was part of the audit cycle by WADA in 2022. So part of a bunch of countries that were audited on the legislation. The non-compliance, we were one of two countries. There was another Caribbean country that was identified in this cycle. So that was done in 2022. We received a notification from WIDA in October 2022 that we were non-compliant. We had already started on what we refer to as sports integrity legislation. We had a public consultation meeting in November, which was about 2 weeks after that notice from WIDA with SASCOT and all the national federations, including government. That process of comprehensive sports integrity legislation that would have brought us then in compliance with the code and with other precepts of global sport had to be stalled when WIDA sent this non-compliance and gave us this strict deadline. They weren't prepared to accept the process of a public consultation and the timeline for the normal promulgation of law. So that's how we came to be in the situation. Thank you.
Minister, before we go take follow-up questions, can I ask one question from our online platform? We've got journalists from all over the world who've joined us virtually as well. This one is from Len Moleko from SAFM. He asks, is an appeal process that is in place to buy SA time, at least for the World Cups in cricket and rugby? But hockey in November and Bafana in January could be in jeopardy. Could matters be solved by then?
If we were to ask that question directly, the idea is not to delay or to kick the can down the road. It's to resolve the problem. And the problem is actually to make sure that we're compliant. If we are compliant, it has got nothing to do. Of course, there are many other events that are coming. There's 2024, there's 2027 beating. There are 2 World Cups at the moment. That creates a bit of anxiety and hysteria that we appreciate. But our purpose now is not because we want to kick the can down the road. We want to find a permanent solution. That permanent solution is South Africa's commitment to anti-doping is unquestionable. And I think if we are to do so, let's make sure that we amend several provisions so that they are compliant. That is our purpose, Muleko. So it's not about buying time. Of course, we've got to do things within an allowed certain period of time frames in terms of our lawmaking processes, including parliamentary. Now that Cabinet has approved, which is an important step, approved the release of a bill, it will then be approved by the Office of the State Law Advisors, come to Parliament. Parliament has got its own processes. We cannot escape the process of public participation in South Africa. Otherwise, we'll be eliminating one of the key tenets of our constitutional participative democracy. Thank you very much, Muleko.
Thanks, Zita. To the anti-doping agency, what if the appeal is denied? What's going to happen? Do you have Plan B? And also, what would be the impact of that on our national teams?
Minister Justin for the NCA. The official opposition a few days ago took it upon themselves as if to start this process with the private member bill. Isn't this a time where we should be working together as opposed to having division between the two parties, feeling that the government is letting South Africa down when it comes to this type of event? And also, are we saying that we've received some time to work through this process from WIDA in order to get through this? But as far as I know, there was a date mentioned of somewhere in October that we needed to be compliant by. Have we then received notification from them that we will be allowed to do this and that they will not sort of forgo the process?
Mr. Ayana?
Minister, I just want to ask a different question to this thing. When you took over in the department, did you, by any chance, find a department with a pile of work that hasn't been resolved in the past years? I mean, we're talking about the women in sport, the crime of Banyana, now this. When you took over, do you find a lot of work piling up, being pushed away now? If the question is clear.
My colleague did touch on this, but just what exactly will be the consequences if we don't comply and the appeal is not successful? Thank you.
Sure, shall I go ahead and answer those questions?
Do you want to go first, please?
Thank you. The question on what if the appeal is denied, the way the process works, I think what you meant is what if we lose on appeal. The appeal cannot be denied since we are filing the letter of intent, and WADA is obligated based on the code and the standard to file the appeal to the Court of Arbitration. The Court of Arbitration will rule on the matter. And this has its process to unfold. As the Minister said, we may not even go to that process if WADA accepts the letter of dispute today. It may not go. Whether on the success of the appeal, obviously it would be premature for me to speculate on that, because it will be an independent process in terms of the Court of Arbitration that will rule on that. And then I think that answers also your question, consequences of losing an appeal.
If we don't comply and we lose everything, what could be the risk here? Is it just that we won't be able to have the South African flag fly at sporting competitions, or does it go further than that?
No, the consequences won't change. And again, you're speculating if we lose the appeal, the actual process, then the consequences will then be enforced that were already outlined. Vika, do you want to add on?
Just to add to that, while the process is before the Court of Arbitration for Sport, if we do get there, there's a parallel process that happens, getting the draft amendment bill to Parliament, and for Parliament to review for promulgation. So the one will happen before the other, and it's favourable that Parliament takes a decision before we even get there. If that answers your question.
Any comment, President?
Yes, the one thing that seems to come through very strongly is that there's a focus on the top 4 sports that you also mentioned. SASWOC has 76 members, and all of them are highly concerned, and all of them, including surfing, for example, and life-saving, are attending international events. So the process that we're following is geared to assist all of those federations to travel to events, sing the anthem, wear the colours, because those colours are not affected, the anthem is not affected, so they'll be doing all of those things while this process is in place.
Thank you, President. You would have seen that Justin, since the decision, even before that, you may not, I'm sure you'll be aware, that we have been acting almost like a 360 to make sure that, to avoid the consequence. If you read the consequences, there is no country that has got desires of such consequences if we are a sporting loving nation like ourselves, hence represented by SASCOC here. So we've been working around the clock to make sure that we comply, because we are, in terms of anti-doping, we're a leading country in the continent. I think also WADA appreciates that point. The fact that we're the host to a regional WADA office in South Africa, in the continent, says a lot about us. We've got the world-class infrastructure of anti-doping institute in the Free State. Many countries in the continent, they come to us as we speak. The question you were asking about, I would not want to enter the fray of political parties. But let me just say those whom I found very responsible, they have not made any comment except to call me direct to ask what has happened. And I've clarified to them, and including this morning, I addressed the portfolio committee. As you know, our portfolio committee is multi-party. They're quite happy and overjoyed about the work that we're doing. Those who have decided not to call and make public statements, I really have less to say about them, because I think at the point where our sport has been able to lift up the spirit of our nation building and social cohesion, I wouldn't want to lose that momentum and enter a fray of political parties. However, if they still have an interest of South Africa at heart, they should be making sure that they assist us to make sure that we comply. So what the calls will expect from whoever made statements in public is to say we wish the department and we work with the department if there are any suggestions, if they've got any contact with Montreal. People in Montreal are still sleeping at this time. That's why I said to my friend, the reason we have not sent yet the appeal now, they're still sleeping. So as soon as maybe midday, according to them, which will be afternoon to us, they will be able to receive that. So I don't want to enter a fray because sport must be apolitical, it must be in the interest of nation building and social cohesion. So I think that the point we make is that South Africa's commitment to anti-doping is unquestionable. The appeal that we are lodging, we are filing today, it immediately, therefore, it will make that consequences will have no effect. There is a long process that must be followed. Of course, it's an independent process of WADA, but we don't think necessarily, for example, some of those who commentated in public without asking even say so ourselves, they are talking about national anthem. In the recommendation, there's nothing about a national anthem. The recommendations in terms of consequences is about a flag, it's about hosting and so on. So, to an extent that themselves are misinformed, they're talking about not singing, they're calling it jerseys and so on. Those things are not there. That's why I don't want to enter that fray, because it's political gymnasium, people want to make comments about it. I guess it's not the moment to comment about those issues now. Our preoccupation is to deal with the issue that we're presenting today. Whether there was a load of work, of course, if you take over any department, you yourself, if you were to be elevated from your media house now to be the editor, you'll find a lot of load of work. Does it say anything about that? No. It means you must just deal with it. You don't look back whether who's responsible or what. So, with due respect, I will not comment on that, but there's a lot of work that we must do to make sure that we deal with these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Kholam, just one for you. Do we have former examples of other countries being impacted like this and being successful upon appeal?
Minister, take us through the process. The bill has been adopted, approved by Cabinet. From there, what's going to happen? When are you tabling it to Parliament so that the parliamentarians can hit the ground running to target that May, more or less, deadline that you were talking about, and also including the question of public hearings? Take us through the process so that we know that from being approved by Cabinet, this is what is going to happen, and then you tabling it in Parliament. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, there have been quite a few other countries also affected or declared non-compliant. As I mentioned, WADA has a 2-year cycle of countries that they audit, so a sample is taken from all the sporting countries. Previously, countries that were declared non-compliant includes France, Spain, or Argentina, and it was all pertaining to legislations. Currently, we are preparing for a UNESCO meeting on this, the public authorities, with respect to obligations for the code. This meeting happens towards the end of October, and the list of countries, especially European countries and Asian countries, are long, and it's purely about legislation, about non-compliance. They have not yet been audited or been declared non-compliant, but they are aware of it, and we will be discussing this in the forum at UNESCO, how public authorities can better respond and adapt to the changing code with respect to legislation.
And have they been successful in the appeals? Former examples of the countries have been deemed to be non-compliant. I'm not so sure about all the countries that, in terms of with appeals, but I know specifically Spain, Argentina, and France have been able to amend and adjust their legislation before the consequences of non-compliance were enforced.
Minister, I think the question.
Minister, just a bit closer, if you can just a quick summary what's happening.
What will happen, I think the significant step in terms of processing a bill in a South African context. Step 1 has been passed. And I think you'll appreciate the shortest period in which that happened since the decision was taken. It's a demonstration showcasing the commitment. 4th October, Cabinet approves the processing of a bill. That is one arm of state. The Parliament is independent. Of course, we have briefed the portfolio committee. The portfolio committee, through its chairperson, there are various committees in Parliament, the chairs of chairs, Honorable Frolik and others, who may want to meet and make sure that expeditiously everybody else involved is brought. And I'm sure at a particular time they may want to ask the department to come and say it as well, to make presentations around these issues. And we don't participate in terms of the processes of Parliament independently, except to make a call through a portfolio committee about the agents of the matter, which we did this morning. I have no doubt that everybody appreciates the agents of the matter. From the cabinet point of view, I think my colleagues have full appreciation of that, hence the decision was taken. The portfolio committee has full appreciation of the briefing, as well as its commitment to make sure that should the matter come before them of any process, they will make sure that the process is processed, the matters are processed. The appreciation from the Deputy President, who is a leader of government business, also to appreciate that indeed, in spite of the fact that there's some anxiety created with this issue, but the commitment is important, that our commitment to anti-doping is unquestionable as a country. Mhlekazi wam, silapha ke ngokuba uMzantsi Afrika bekuthathwe isigqibo ngumbutho wesizwe wehlabathi obizwa iWADA ukuba singathathi inxaxheba ngoba kunesolotya emthethweni elingahambelani nemisebenzi abayenzayo. Sesithathe isigqibo ke uba iCabinet izayilungisa loo nto ngokomgaqo nomthetho olawula ezinto ze-anti-doping. Siyathemba ukuba ke ngexesha elisikelweyo between now and May next year sabe siwenzile amalinge uqinisekisa uba uMzantsi Afrika awuphazanyiswa uchatshazelwe ngokuba uparticipate ku-international games. Sizimisele ke sizinkokheli neCabinet, nasiyaqemba neParlamente nayo. Namhlanje benidibene neportfolio committee, sizawuqinisekisa ukuba nezemidlalo, irugby necricket azichatshazelwa yile nto isigqibo sithathwe yiWADA, kuba okwangoku siyasenza isicelo sokungxengxeza i-appeal. Eso sicelo eso sizawuchaza ukuba yonke into ebinokwenzeka ingenzeki kude kunyanzeleke ukuba isigqibo bazasithatha basirhoxise, ngoba siyacela ukuba isigqibo sabo basirhoxise, sichaza izizathu ke phofu ezibalulekileyo. Enkosi.
If there are no further questions, I think we can adjourn. Thank you so much, Minister, Mr. Hendricks, and Team Sites for your time this afternoon. Thank you so much, colleagues, both here in Cape Town and on our virtual platforms around the world, for joining us for our media briefing this afternoon. We have adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.